back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, our discussion is one we've covered time and time again because it is so relatable. It's taking that leap from your current career and going into your passion of having an interior design business. Many guests on the show have come and talked to us about this, and it's always beneficial to hear someone's experience with this because they're all different. But yet they all give us that roadmap and all give us that confidence that it's doable. Right? So if you're listening now and you're not in the interior design industry and this is your passion, we all know that it can be scary, but it also can be done. And today I'm sitting down with Layton Campbell, owner of JLayton Interiors. In Layton's previous career, he, before pivoting, was a performer on Broadway and on cruise ships. His interest in design was always present in his life, but it became more, let's say, not being able to be ignored as he got older, right? Layton made his way around the world and back to his hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's when he decided to lean into his passion for interior design. Very excited to have Layton share his story with us. Hi, Layton. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. Thanks for having me.
Layton, I'm looking forward to our conversation. First of all, I was looking at your website. Your work is amazing. Really beautiful work that you do. And interesting to learn that you come from a background in performance, Broadway, and cruise ships and all the things. And you mentioned to me that one of the things that you have learned in your journey is that there is an art to pivoting from one passion to another, but staying true to yourself in that pivot and as you grow the next passion and the next business. And I thought maybe I would ask you to start there, talking to me a little bit about that philosophy that you have and that learning lesson actually that you have there.
Sure. I believe my experience on stage and the background of entertainment, you become accustomed to performing in front of people, which if you look at design, we can be creative, as I mentioned, all day long. But if you can't get up in front of your client and sell yourself and sell your ideas and sell your design, then you're kind of lost. And I think the background of having that skill set really propelled me to be able to communicate what I wanted to the clients to showcase my work.
And what was the transition from performing to design? Was it something where design was always like this layer in your life all along, and then it just became, let me put it I was going to say front stage. Aren't I just so smart?
Good pun.
Right?
Yeah. So I would call it a sleepy, in the background kind of passion. I always loved music. I always loved singing. And so I was a voice major first at UNC Greensboro in North Carolina. Then after touring and traveling and living out of hotels in different places, I got tired of that sort of gypsy life you hear performers talk about. And so I wanted to shift into what I thought would be a real job. And so I went toward my other passion, albeit, like I said, kind of sleepy in the background, interior design. And it became more obvious as I was in my 20s and realizing I really loved it. So that's kind of how I made the shift. It was a conscious decision,
Mm.
honestly. I did leave performing on purpose to do this, to make a change in my life. But and I think that my history growing up, though, I always was intrigued by interior design. I always helped my mom when we redid the house.
Mm.
Always shifted furniture around the living. You've heard this story from other
Yes.
building
Yeah.
designers
Yeah.
about doing
It's
that
in
when
your
they're kids.
DNA, right?
So I think so. And then you just develop it. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a conscious shift. Although I still think being creative is who I am,
Mm.
one way or the other. And that's the thing that carries through.
Mm. And so when you decided to make your conscious shift, you didn't go right into business on your own, I understand. You went and worked for other designers first. Is that correct, Layton?
Yes, actually, and I went back to school for 2 years.
Oh, okay. So you actually went and got the education and, you did the whole thing, the whole,
Uh,
yep.
yeah,
Okay.
I did. Or I should say, I went back for 2 years, but had to move back to North Carolina for my father had a lung transplant, and I
Mm.
needed to be local. But that being said, I came back to Charlotte, and I worked for a designer here in town as an associate or assistant, and really got my feet wet and learned a lot from that experience. And I recommend that to anyone, instead of maybe just starting out on their own out of nowhere. It helps you in many respects, from learning about how to deal with people and relationships, working on the business side of it, as we discussed earlier, and then also just getting your confidence up to
Mm.
do this on your own. I think that everybody would benefit from having a little interim period if they could.
Mm. So, and I agree. I think that it's the rare person that can begin by having their own design firm and being the entrepreneur, the principal of it. When it's not impossible, and typically, I would say when it does happen, often they've got some body of work experience, whether it's a corporate job for many years where they led other people, or other types of entrepreneurial. But it's the rare person that comes out and starts their own business. It's reminding me of Megan Moulton, because insanely accomplished businesswoman. What she has created in now 3.5, 4 years in business is remarkable. And she comes from the medical field. She was a pharmaceutical rep, but even as that, so maybe it's not technically running a brick and mortar business, but I'm sure that whole experience of having multiple accounts, having to set up your day, having to meet quotas, and do the sales pitch and all of that, it informed her, I'm sure, when she started her business. So usually, if you have no business experience, you have no other, we call them here the Eric Award transferable skills that are really going to impact the business operations side, it is super valuable to go work for another firm for a period of time, right?
Yeah, and to your point, if you've had the background in business of some sort, I believe it's extremely beneficial. For me at my age, when I started and moved back, I was pretty young, and it served me very well to have that 3-year stint, and then and build up sort of a clientele relationship, once I went off on my own as well.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about it's. I'm gonna. It's funny. I don't often get the chance to ask people about this, so I'm going to take the opportunity with you, Layton. Tell me about the looking back, the period of time that you spent working for other firms. Tell me, like, best practices, remembering the person you were, the level of experience or inexperience you had, and tell me some things that you took from it. Tell me maybe some observations of, what, if I knew now what I knew then, I might have approached or looked at this experience working for someone else in a different way. Talk to the designers now that are working for other firms.
So I think, the advantages of being in that position and things I took away was education in how to read people,
Mm.
and not just what they're telling you, but what their body language is, what you're seeing in their eyes. You have to be very aware of all of those behind the scenes communications that they're giving you. Um, the the things that and I'm trying to think of things that I stumbled upon that were surprises, so to speak, and that would be
And do
gosh.
you mean by that, Layton, that as in that role where you are the assistant to the principal, do you mean that when you look back, as your principal is involved in the conversation and you're literally an observer, that you were recognizing, oh, there's where the client said something, but their body language actually said something else? And whether your principal knew it or not, is that what you mean by being able to almost be the fly on the wall during the process of working for someone else?
Yes, and then yes, definitely that's your first sort of glimpse. But then, most assistants end up also having dialogue and personal interaction with the
Mm.
client, and you learn firsthand
Okay,
that
so you're learning that you're responsible for the communication that's happening here. So you got to up your game in your communication skills.
yes, and I
Okay.
think pivoting to the the artful, creative side of me with my performance background. When you're acting, you're not just doing something on one level. It's also you're internalizing a lot of things that, if you compare it to method acting, for instance, it's not just a body motion or something that you're speaking a line to. You're actually engaging another character. So reading the other characters, all of their signs, whether, like I said, it's speaking and conversation or body, or just a glance, it's very important in your insight.
Mm. You know what's interesting, Leighton? I am now part of Heroic Public Speaking. It's a year-long speaking program. Very it's a tremendous gift and opportunity for me to be a part of this right now. And what's interesting is Michael Port and Amy Port are the husband and wife that run this, and they're both Yale and NYU educated actors, TV credits, play credits, all the things. And what they are is they're actors that are teaching public speakers. And just last week, Michael and I'm sorry, Amy went through that explanation and said, when you are an actor on stage, you're not just there acting at the other person. You're not there doing your thing. You're in your head delivering it across the space to the other person, and while they're talking, you're like getting ready for your next line. They're like, no, you're in this dynamic of giving and receiving, and exactly what you just said. And they were relating it to speaking, your relationship with your audience, that there's not a wall there, make it a circle. And you just related it to the sales process, to the consultation process, and I think you're 100% on the money with that. And it's interesting that you learned it from your acting background and then perfected it while working and doing your interior design business. That's interesting. Isn't that cool?
It is, and it's affirming to hear that they used the same sort of analogy. And it's it it really helps you develop a relationship with clients that um, you interior design is so intimate, right? You are developing someone's where they're going to live, where their memories are being made. So it's an extremely personal relationship. And I believe if you're a good listener, and that means, again, you're not just spewing your spiel, you're actually receiving their feedback and you're taking everything to heart, so that you know what to do. And I think that's where a lot of designers misstep, is that they have their agenda, they have their design, but they're not really paying attention or listening beyond, and some people aren't comfortable just vocalizing something that they're feeling. And so I think you do have to be very receptive to all forms of communication
Mm,
in order to do a good job
mm.
for each individual client, because everyone's different.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Your stakes are higher. When I'm on stage and I'm speaking to a group of designers, yes, it's very important to me that I connect. But I'm not designing the space that you're going to live in every day, right?
Right.
Like your stakes are much higher, that you are actually listening, keying in, tuning in to the desires, the wants, the needs that the client is either doing a good or a poor job of expressing. That's kind of what you're saying. It's your job to get to the heart of it so that you can deliver a good outcome for them, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, interesting. Now, also taking another moment in this period of time working for other people, I recently had a conversation with an interior designer who's in this mode now, who had the ability and was prepared to open their own interior design firm. And we talked it through and went all the things. And ultimately, there was an opportunity to work for a seasoned designer in the area that this designer lives. And by, half a dozen conversations or whatever, decided that this was a good move to make. And I'm always in favor of working for somebody else first. Like, make your mistakes there, figure out the things that, why invent the wheel, right? But I'll tell you, one of the particular challenges that this designer is experiencing working in the other firm is that this designer is a highly detailed, organized, systems-driven person by nature. And the designer that the person is working for is not. And so it's very difficult for the designer who is working in the firm, because there's only so much a principal thinks that their associate is going to school them on, right? So
Yeah.
did you have that, or I don't know where your skill set lies. Are you innately organized on the business and the operation side? And did you work for others who were as well and it lined up? Or did you have any situation there where it's tough, there's conflict?
I think it was innate for me. I am organized as a person in general. I mean, if you walked into my closet, my shirts are all color coded, my shoes are done by boots and loafers and so on and so forth. So I mean, I've got that in my DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, the designer I worked for was absolutely a creative genius, and I learned a lot from that. But I had to keep that sort of business side in tow, or else really it wouldn't have gone smoothly.
Mm.
But here's the thing, I recognized that, and that's the valuable observation in the long run that you take with you. You go, I can't operate like that, and
Mm-hmm.
nor will my business grow if I did. So I think that it was very beneficial to experience and I won't say it's negative. It was a learning lesson.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything is, we're all where we're supposed to be. And so what you're saying is that the outcome was that you understood that exactly the premise of the podcast, that your creativity is not going to be the thing that gets you job after job and client after client, because at some point the water is going to, what's that, the boat is leaking and all the things,
Yeah.
right? But seeing it uphand, and then just that little nudge of being the lesser authority in the environment, very difficult, isn't it?
It is, because you can't really call someone out that you're actually working
Mm-hmm.
for. I subtly point out some things that might be missing in the way that business direction is going, but it's it's more of when you, I guess, ultimately decide to take things in your own hands and open your own business, that you've learned that valuable lesson, and you see the difference it makes if you don't take the right steps
Yeah.
to be and not just a creative but a business
Mm.
person as well.
One of the things that I've been consistently saying over the last couple of months is, here's your line. You mind if I share some feedback with you? Are you interested in some feedback on this project? Are you interested? You have to ask, because if the person looks at you and says no, just get back to your desk. Okay, right? Like there's
Right.
not a lot you can do. It's a very difficult situation. I think that particularly when you come to it with like yourself and this designer with of an inner compass that's highly organized. The rest of us can recognize if something's a little too far out, and even an unorganized person will have discomfort in things being chaotic. But when you are innately organized and detail orientated as far as to the operation sides, it's a challenging situation. I don't know that there's much answer for it, and you other than to take your lessons, do your best, and remember not to repeat when you do your own, right?
As much as possible.
Mm-hmm,
Yes.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. So then take us to, you go out on your own, and anything stick out to you, Layton, from that experience. A lot of times we do work for someone else, and we only see the flaws of the person that we work for, and we're absolutely convinced that we are going to just light the world on fire because we have all the answers. This is very typical of all of us at some point in our lives, right? And so how do you approach going out onto your own? Did you have a plan? Did you do the, like Cheryl Luckett, I think she called it the 36 or the 360. Oh, we'll put it in the show notes. She had a very specific plan when she launched her own interior design firm, and she took, I think it was 36 months, and literally planned. She planned her marketing. She planned, her knowledge, her experience, all the things, so that when she opened, she felt as good as she could possibly feel. And then by contrast, when I spoke to Nate Burkus, he was basically like, you know what? I was making $750 a week. I hated the job I was at. And I thought all I had to do was make $750 on any one job next week, and I could walk away from this job. And that's how we went into business. So how did you go into business, Layton?
Well, I'll tell you, it's really very interesting and a little bit closer to Nate's than the other designer. So, not because I did not appreciate it, and I loved the designer I worked with. We laughed our heads off.
Mm,
She was so funny, and talented. So again, I learned a lot. But it was a year or so after 9/11, and where I was located in or am located in Charlotte, the effects financially didn't hit right away, but it did eventually. And so I was asked if I would consider going part-time.
mm.
And here I was in my early 30s, and I said, uh, and I went on vacation, and I was talking to my partner, and I said, hey, I can't work part-time at my age. I just can't do this. And so I was a bit thrust into the decision of
Mm.
what am I going to do? I did have kind of a plan, and here's kind of a fun fact about how I bridged what I used to do in performing and singing. I taught voice lessons for the first 2.5 years that I was building my business. So
Mm.
I was making money to pay the bills, so to speak, uh, basically at the piano teaching kids. And I had a couple of folks reach out to me early on, and I basically built two businesses at one time
Wow.
because I ended up having about 17 kids before I stopped,
Wow.
which was
You could
a
have
lot
turned
of.
that into a career if you chose to.
Yeah, I could have. I didn't want to. I have the utmost respect for teachers, and I think that they're not appreciated
But
nearly
there's kids
enough.
involved.
There's kids involved, and also when you're teaching voice, you're sitting at a piano for how many hours at that point a day? And I'm a go-getter, and I'm a doer. So I wanted to get out and do my thing. But that's what I did. And so I had a project or two the first year, and then I developed, and of course, referral is huge in this business, right? As
Mm-hmm.
much as your marketing plan, and now I do a lot more with that. But the first few years, I had to build my business, and that's kind of how I did it. But I was like, I'm not going to stick with a $500 every 2 week job, and then be cut even further to
Mm.
part time. I just couldn't make it on that, and that I so that's really how it evolved. I was somewhat comfortable in my other position, except monetarily.
Mm.
I think Nate's comment is accurate. You're certainly not going to grow a lot in that position. So, you know, I look back and I think, wow, everything is meant to be, and I did the right thing, but it was absolutely terrifying
Mm.
because I was comfortable. And you're putting yourself in a very dangerous sort of uncharted territory for oneself to do that on your own. And it takes a lot of guts, but you have to believe in yourself. I mean, I know
Mm.
it sounds cliche, but you really do have to believe in yourself, in your background, and the things that you've learned, and know that you can take it forward.
Now, confidence in what you're doing is, it is absolutely the component that it's the little secret sauce magic of any decision, anything that we do, right? And we have varying levels of confidence throughout the day depending on the task at hand. But a little teaspoon you got to have no matter what,
Right.
right?
Yeah, you do. I mean, no matter what you're doing, you have to have that.
Exactly.
Otherwise, people will you'll get steamrolled.
Right. And it's also too, you mentioned, which kind of leads into this. You said uh, that you have a how-to guide for starting a design business from the ground up, the steps involved, and the art of being competitive and going after clients when you're new on the scene. So you probably started to learn these skills when you first went out into business. What are the after lessons there that you're talking about here?
Well, I think that what you need to do, number one, is to have some sort of business plan. That's key in any business. And for me, as I mentioned, it was, okay, this is how I'm going to make ends meet. And in that time, I'm going to take this job, and I will not be afraid to get that information out to other people, whether it's asking them to host some sort of reveal of your work, or now we have Instagram and social media, where that wasn't as prevalent then at all,
Mm,
or at all actually.
right.
So it was a more a personal approach then, about asking your clients to not be afraid to share that they love your work. Well, how about telling so and so and so this. So I think don't be afraid to ask your as you build your business, to ask them to refer you. I mean,
Mm,
it's it's something a lot of people might be uncomfortable doing, but to be honest, it ends up being a really wonderful thing for your client, because they're proud of it,
mm,
and they want to share it and and promote you because they actually love what you did. So that was kind of in my mind how I was going to do this, and the backside of building people following and referral. Um, and then as far as like uh, I had to figure out liaisons with different resources. I mean,
mm,
and that was also, if you can learn that, if you're working for someone and you stay in the same area, as your previous job working for a firm or a designer, then hopefully you've built up some relationships with your resources that
mm-hmm.
you're going to call on, because at the end of the day, you're only as good as your team.
Right.
And I'm a huge proponent of teamwork. And I mean, it you don't see your work come to fruition in a valuable and beautiful way unless you have the right people helping you, and service. And that's the other thing. I mean, you have to deliver amazing service to your clients in order for them to have the confidence also to share you
Right.
with other people. So it's a lot of that kind of building to me. You've got to build not just your own self-confidence, as I mentioned before, but also the confidence of your client base that will refer you, and also your resources that are going to start touting your work,
Mm.
and then show up and be good and do a great job for you.
I love these things that, it's funny because when you talk about having the confidence, you're right. Back in the day, we couldn't just take our work and put it on Instagram. And so we did rely a lot more on referrals and people telling, word of mouth and getting excited. How do you, I imagine you still do that regardless, that Instagram and websites are a thing. How do you do it, Layton? Is it something that you sort of just organically weave into your conversation with your client all throughout the process? Oh, you're going to have your friends this weekend. I can't wait for you to be able to show them this. Or do you do it more directly, or a combination? Is it like, will you refer me to your friends? Will you have a party hosting your friends and having me here to talk about the design? Like, how do you actually go about it?
I think it's generally more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe earlier on, and most people, their first clients are someone they know or someone that they've worked with, and their kids are now building a home or doing so. So it's kind of it's a little easier, I believe, for me it was earlier on to say, hey, I'm willing to take on so and so project. Now, as my work is very high end for the most part, and I would say more, I can't wait till, you have your first event and everyone gets to see this place. It's such a
Mm.
showstopper.
Mm.
Um, that kind of thing is how I weave into conversation about promotion within your client base. Now, you brought up a great point that we also have the tools. I am on Instagram, and my work is I am I advertise as well as featured in a lot of local and regional and national magazines. So that's you get the feather in the cap that way and exposure that way. So I think you have to be multi-pronged on your marketing as you develop your business. I just think as you start, it's unless you have a lot of investment funds to do all that. Now, Instagram is free
Right,
basically, so
right,
I
right.
think that's great for anybody, and that's part of design. It's a visual format platform, and so it just lends itself hand in hand to that. Um, so in a way, it's a little easier than it was, 20 years ago, but uh,
Don't get me
to
started.
get your name out there, yeah, yeah, so we've been there, but trying to be relevant, I will say now I definitely am diversified on marketing for
Hmm.
sure.
And so, how do you approach marketing, Layton? Do you put aside, 20% of your gross revenue, which is a good number to sort of look at, or 18, 10, 10? Well, I guess it's really more. I have to check myself. Window Works always did 20%, and we ended up in a position where we got consistently audited 3 years in a row because the IRS thinks it's too much. So the actual is 10 to 15% is the recommended. Do you do it intentionally to that level, Layton, where you sit down and you're like, okay, 2023 is coming up. I am going to allot X amount of thousands of dollars for marketing, and then I'm going to sit here, and some of it is going to be, straight on purchasing print ad. Part of it is going to be, whatever I'm going to go into. Maybe I'll have a PR rep that's going to pitch me for regional work, or how do you approach the actual nuts and bolts of your marketing?
Well, now to your point, I do have a PR person, and that is part of obviously my budget, and as well as my local ads. And I target the audience in those two publications that are local. They're high-end readers, and you do your homework on who their distribution encompasses. And um, I, I do sit down though and figure out, here's what I've spent last year. Here's what I think I'll spend this year. Will that increase? Will it pivot a little bit? You do keep in mind, like I mentioned, that you've got Instagram, which is a free form of advertising,
Mm-hmm.
basically,
Mm-hmm.
and but then I do a lot, a certain amount for print. As you grow and your business grows, that number can increase if you so choose. Sometimes I think it's a little not great to spread yourself too thin. I really try to focus on, the two places I want to be featured locally, and I think that's the key for a designer. Figure out where you want to be seen and who you want to see your work, and
Mm.
then that's how you want to cater your work to the client base that you're trying to develop, and you have to showcase that kind of level, whatever it is. But that's that's really how I sit down annually, and figure that out, and then and I would say you're right. It's probably between I probably about 10%
Which
of
is a
what
good
I
healthy number.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to spread myself too thin,
hmm
and having a good PR person is not an inexpensive expenditure. So that's that's
We're
something
not
that
dissing you, Austin. We love you.
no, no. I love Austin. He's great.
He is.
No.
Okay. So here's the thing. In there, what I love is a couple of times you mentioned that you have identified two very specific regional print magazines that your target client is reading. Like, you are not unsure of it at this point. You know that your demographic is reading that. You know that these magazines are where you want to be. And I'm sure between advertising straight up and then editorial with pitching different projects and so forth, you're probably showing up a couple of times a year in each of these and making sure that you're consistently staying top of mind with this target audience, right?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, the ads are one thing, but usually when you invest in this kind of publication, advertising, marketing uh, plan, they are already going to feature you at least once in an editorial, usually twice.
Mm.
Both of these publications also will feature a project,
Mm-hmm.
and that's even a bigger exposure so that someone sees an actual whole house project. For me, for instance, I mean, you're going to see kitchen, bedroom, baths, living room, dining rooms, and someone really can see how you weave together an entire project, not just a snippet of an ad.
Mm-hmm.
So and again, I think when any designer thinks about advertising and marketing, think about the layering of it, because that's where it really is beneficial. You layer all of that, as well as what Austin does to pitch for regional and national publications, and getting quoted in AD Pro, or like that I have in that Business of Home, other publications that get your name out to even your own industry
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
colleagues is
Yes,
good.
I mean, what it is I love that you said the layering. We talk about it the 7 times that someone's got to see you before they go, oh, Layton's an interior designer here in Charlotte, right? It's the
Yeah,
first time
exactly.
it's like, oh, that's pretty, whatever, moving on, right? But by the seventh time, it starts to sit with you, and now you're at lunch, dinner, cocktail party, and your friend says, I need an interior designer. It's like, oh, did you hear of Layton Campbell? Do you know him? No, but I mean, his work is beautiful. I haven't met him, but la 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 la. And I think that the idea of getting quoted in Business of Home and AD Pro, those types of things aren't necessarily going to result in a client referral or phone call, but they do give the credibility when that one woman tells the other woman about you, and then she goes to your website, and then she sees your work, and she sees that you're in the different regional publications and so forth, and then that there's industry, trade industry sources that are saying you're the deal. So it to your point, I love the layering. It's all of the things that are working together to create this. I just heard Nicole Heimer in my head. This brand, right? This
Hmm.
luxury brand of an interior design firm.
Right. And that's exactly what I that's the greatest term for it, because you're branding.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like at my work I am out there advertising for someone to, buy a certain product, like more of a goods kind of
Mm-hmm.
manufacturer would do. I'm selling a brand,
Mm-hmm.
and it to you was a great story about that you said about how someone talks about your work when they're discussing their someone. Oh yeah, my best friend is they're building a house, they need a designer, or they're renovating and they need a designer, and we threw you out because, and they said, oh gosh, I saw your work. And to your point, yes, if they go on to the Instagram page or my website, and they see that you're in Wall Street Journal or Business of Home, it gives you clout. It gives you like credibility.
Mm-hmm.
So getting into those publications, it's not like it's for naught.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's definitely it gives you that little something panache that somebody else, it may put you over the edge. They'll go, well, he's got to know what he's doing.
Exactly, exactly. Then you have to know what you're doing when you get the call.
Mhm. Right, exactly.
Right. And it's funny because I mean, look, if we were at a panel discussion now, public, mixed community, I probably wouldn't say this next part of the conversation, but it's us. This is we talk business here and we talk the real stuff. Otherwise, what's the point? I can tell you that when I get any of our trade publications and I whether it's AD Pro, whether it's Designers Today, whether it's Business of Home, whatever other ones, Window Fashion Vision, whatever it is, I will tell you that I have had people over the years when I meet them or if I'm coaching with them, they'll say to me, how do these designers get these features in these magazines? And how do these designers get on these panels and so forth? And I am just literally going to tell you that when I see a roundup article, this happened exactly about a year and a half ago. So I had been at High Point with a bunch of women in my house, and they are, at one point it came up about this exact conversation. How do people get quoted by AD Pro and Business of Home and blah, blah, blah. And about a month later, I get I think it was Designers Today, digital magazine, and it says whatever the title says. It said something that made me read it because normally I don't care about the pretty. There was something in the title that it said these 6 designers share their blah blah blah, and it wasn't their best shade of pink because I don't care about it, but It was something that I opened it up, and I looked, and the 6 designers that were there, I knew 5 of the 6 of them, and I knew for a fact that the 5 of the 6 had PR reps. And that did not take anything away from the ability for them to have the information, the expertise to share their point of view on that topic. Not one bit. But I sent it to the women that were just saying to me, how does this happen? And so what I'm saying is, it's not that we've had Amy Fleury on the show, and she was an editor, and she came in and she wrote the 2 books, Recipe for Press and Recipe for Press for Designers. And also Ren Miller, who is the editor-in-chief over at Design New Jersey, which is a regional magazine, probably much like what you're describing, Layton. And they both said, we are racing the clock on the daily, putting a magazine together. And the people that come to us prepared, ready, with their bio, with their headshot, with their point of view, with their pictures, with their blah, 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 blah. And the people that are ready when we need 3 quotes about a particular topic that turn it around right then and there. But here's the thing. If you don't get the phone call, it's not because you're not worthy. It's because they don't know you. And all of the editors that have been on this show have said that. It's about who do we know. And so to your point, having Austin, Austin, this is what he does. He's running around to all of the people. He knows LuAnn. He knows, Dennis. He knows, in the day you know Jane. I don't know who's the editor there. And he reaches out, says, hey, I got Layton. He's a great guy, but you got to prove it to me, just like you got to prove it to all the other people. That's my point. You have to have your chops. So there just has come a period of time that if you want to, that's the result of investing in PR, right?
Yes, and I decided that August of 2020, I think. In the throes of this pandemic, I opened a new office outside of my home office too. I mean, and in conjunction with that, my introduction to Austin was kind of it was by happenstance, and from a rep that knew us both and said to Austin, I think you need to meet Layton. His work is phenomenal, and you guys seem like you would be a great match. You have to find the right PR person. But
100%.
Yeah, and our first conversation was an hour and a half long, and we just hit it off. And as we were talking, our trajectory was very similar in that you're 2 Southern guys who moved to New York, lived there for a decade, but wanted to kind of go back to their roots. I mean, I kind of had to with my parents' situation, but anyway, I did. I eventually loved being back in Charlotte, and so we had a lot in common. I liked his energy. and that's the kind of thing when you decide to take this leap. And what I wanted to do at this point was to get my work outside of just people know me here in Charlotte. I have, I have a name here. I built a name, but I kind of wanted my work to be out there further in a more national and regional situation. And I knew that I would need a PR, and anyone, to your point, would.
Mm-hmm.
To get into those kind of publications, because if you just send in blindly, they don't know you. You didn't know me. It it it's quite a benefit to
Mm.
me,
It you
and
know
it's
what it
worth.
is, and
Austin, you're worth every penny.
yeah. And listen, getting on a podcast is not the same as getting in a regional magazine. I have 52 spots a year for interior designers. A regional magazine does not have 52 spots a year, right? So for me, when Austin emails, I already know. What I love about when I get a pitch from a PR rep is I know the PR rep knows the game. They know, I don't mean by game. They know the rules. That's what I mean. They know you got to come, you got to bring me somebody smart, you got to teach me something, yada yada. And what I mean to say is, in publications, there's a much tighter pool. Like there's 500 people pitching for 20 spots over the course of a year, 20 features over the course of a 12-month publication. Maybe they've got, one or two major, like you said, those spots in a thing. Me, I got 52 spots, and I'm not, you know what I'm saying? It's easier, but the knowledge is there. That's all I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is that when you aspire to it, that's why I wanted to bring this part of the conversation up, because if you are simply asking the question, oh, how does that person always seem to get quoted in all the big magazines and get the opportunities? And that's just interesting information for me to know. Great. But if you're saying, I want that, then you got to do your due diligence. You got to know that you have the budget and the marketing money to hire a PR up. You have to do what you talked about, have that connection with somebody, because this person is going to advocate for you. And if they don't really get you to your essence, they can't do a good pitch, because a bad pitch is worse than no pitch. So,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And so, but it is something to think about if you aspire to be with your work spread across lots of different platforms, as opposed to waiting for the magic tap on the shoulder and maybe you'll get invited to do something, because that doesn't seem to happen. You have to do it yourself or pay to have somebody to do it, right?
Yeah, and to your what you mentioned about publications, well, most of them have streamlined their issues. They've gone down to quarterly or every 2 months, and so that quote unquote competition to get into those magazines it's very difficult. And people can love your work. These editors might, I have been turned down for things just like, and I want to quote something that I thought about this because of my theater background, and I'm a super fan of Stephen Sondheim. Rest in peace. But to quote Sunday in the Park with George, everything you do, you still audition, and it's that way in this business. And that's why early on I said that about I thought I was getting into a real job. Well, I'm still auditioning. It's just in a different way. And when my work is sent by Austin, or if I send something into a local publication, your work is still, you're being judged against other work, and you're having to compete, so to speak, to get into these kind of publications.
Right. It's not a shoe-in. A PR rep is not go pass, go collect $200. No. But it's a leg up, because the PR rep has developed a relationship with the outlet. They understand, like I said, the rules. How are we pitching this? What do you really need? I would highly encourage you guys, if you're interested, to listen to the episodes that we've had with Amy Fleury and Ren Miller, because they really do tell you how to do it on your own without a PR rep. And then we also have had the PR reps on the show as well. It's a very interesting it's to your point. The biggest thing to take away is it's helpful, but it's not a shoe-in. That's really what it is,
Yeah, it is. I
right?
mean, it, like I don't, Austin's, who I use, his relationships with the editors, his knowledge of what each publication is focusing on. I mean, obviously, your work isn't appropriate for everything, right? We've El Decor and House Beautiful, albeit both incredible publications, are very different in their style and what they're presenting to and their readership is different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure you have a lot more homework to do. Although I will tell you, um, having a PR doesn't mean you are free, that they're
No.
doing everything. No.
You have to
If
show up,
anything,
right?
it is almost a part-time job, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, to provide them. They may get you the question from Business of Home, but you have to provide the answer, and often
In a minute.
emphasis in yes. Oh, by the way, the deadline's at 5 p.m. today, so can you squeeze this in? And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of doing an electrical walkthrough and da da
Right.
da da.
And I got to
Yeah,
disengage my brain, think about the question, give a thoughtful answer that I want to live in print for the rest of time, right? You don't, it's an opportunity. So, and you're changing gears, but that's how it is
yeah,
with, those types of opportunities. They're on the fly and you got to be ready to produce, right?
correct.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's all outstanding. I love, any which way we come. The biggest thing that I know to be true is, my partner in Exciting Windows is a 50-year veteran of running multi-million-dollar marketing accounts, and his mantra is always be marketing, and that's what you have to do. You have to always be marketing because there's nothing that's a given, and PR is just one umbrella, one part of under the umbrella of marketing. They're two separate things, but I think what I mean to say is they come from the same budget, which is what you mentioned in the beginning, is that they meant you pull it from your marketing budget. So I just think this is outstanding. Thank you so much, Layton, for all of this information, your insights, your experiences. So helpful for our peers in the audience to be able to kind of just get them thinking about the places where it aligns with where they are in their journey now. And you've been really very fabulous about sharing your history and your experience with us. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me.
At first glance, we might not see the correlation from how an actor or performer could smoothly transition into being an interior designer, but Layton proved that everyone always has those Eric Award transferable skills. No matter what you've done, you have skills to bring to the table that help you run a successful business. Even if and when you are terrified, like Layton was at the first to start his own firm, know that you have something to offer. He admitted it was scary to switch careers and take that leap, but he knew he wasn't in a place where he wanted to stay forever. He started to feel comfortable, and he didn't like it. If you're an avid listener and a longtime listener of the show, then you know that we have had many conversations with many guests who have made that transition from one career to another, scared or not, comfortable or not. All right. Like I mentioned today, there is no more of a go-getter than Megan Moulton, who started in pharmaceutical sales, right? Terrific episode. You have to listen to it. We also had Mariana Zimmerman, who was working in administration at a hospital, and with the support of her husband, she took the leap into interior design. And then there was Allison Handler here from New Jersey, who was in the fashion design industry and left that to open her own interior design firm. In her first year, she grossed over $1 million. Okay, the list goes on. There's so much proof that you can do it, that you can follow your passion. If you're listening and you haven't done it yet, I know you can do it. Now, Layton had a lot going on for him, right? His experience as an actor helped him hone the skills that you need to read and communicate with people. It helped him learn how to listen to his clients when they spoke so that he could really understand their needs. And it helped him in presenting his solutions and designs to his clients, right? In effect, performing for them, if you will. And then his role as assistant designer. Layton was smart and knew not to overstep when he noticed things were not exactly how he might handle them. Instead, he learned from them, he took them in, and then he used this experience to help formulate his own process for when he did go out on his own. Working as an assistant in an interior design firm is something that Layton highly recommends to do before starting out on your own. And I agree 100%. All right. If it's too late, if you're already going out on your own, fine, you'll get there. We'll figure it out. We'll help you. But if you haven't yet, it's not a bad idea. The other thing that I admired in speaking with Layton was his ability to deal with people and to interact with them. And that comes from a lot from that performance background, right? But we talk about interacting with clients and building trust with them. And it reminds me of the conversation I had way back on the show with Paula Grace. And she shared terrific insights. And I highly recommend this episode if you haven't listened to it yet. It complements this episode nicely in that regard of building trust and learning to listen and value people. Because when you can read people and you can make people feel seen, this is the beginning of trust and where trust is born. All right. I also finally want to say that I love that Layton stayed true to the original passion of performance by teaching the vocal lessons, right, while building his ongoing passion for design. It's a great lesson to take to yourself. You don't have to put aside one passion in place of another. Often you can figure out a way to do both, at least for a period of time. Right? So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, would you share it with a friend or a colleague? I'm asking you, when is the last time that you said to a bestie, have you heard about this podcast, A Well-Designed Business? If it's been a while, you can go right in your app that you're listening to and hit the share button and text it to them or email them. You can do the same from my website if you're listening to the show from my website. And I would very much appreciate if you would share the show with a friend. That is it. That is our show today. I thank you as always for showing up and for being here on this journey with me and for listening. And, just every day, every conversation, we all learn something, we take something away, and it makes what we're doing a little bit easier, makes it make a little bit more sense, right? Thanks for joining me. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn Niagara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnNiagara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to WindowWorksNJ.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.